Welcome to the Herpcore History podcast, presented to you by Little Shop of Horrors. Feel free to reach out to us on any of our social media platforms for any of your feeder needs. All right, let's go ahead and get into this episode. All right, so tonight I'm joined by my friend Paul Ciotti. He's the owner of Triangulum and then some, and been in the hobby for a long time. Avid field herper, RC enthusiast, and all around good guy. So how's it going, Paul? Thanks for being here tonight.
You're quite welcome.
All right.
Quite welcome.
Have you been doing any good field herping out there lately?
I haven't done anything out here for a little while. I'm waiting for a friend to come over from California who wants to sample some of the garter snakes here.
All right.
He believes there's some kind of integrated garter snake here in the Reno Valley. So we're waiting for that. That's about it. We did a little Zonata looking for about, what is it? Well, it's got to be 4 weeks ago now.
Okay.
Since I went to Texas for 2 weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
So and
you were there. You were there with me for a day.
Yes, sir.
You were there for one good day. That was fun. I really enjoyed having you there. It definitely helped the atmosphere for sure.
Yes, sir. Having a partner helps.
Yeah, rather than being there by myself. And when you left, after you left, and I went to the Christmas Mountains for a little while. When I got back, I ran into an acquaintance there and was with him the night that I found the gray band.
Okay. Yeah, that's why when you sent me that picture, I thought it was someone else's. That's why I was talking.
It was somebody else holding it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know it wasn't you. I thought it was some stranger pulled up on you and was like, "Look what I found." I was like, yeah.
Yeah. No, he showed up at the hotel and he had one of my vests.
Oh, that's cool.
He had one of my vests, and I was like, apparently I know this guy,
Yeah.
But I hadn't seen him for probably 5 years.
Uh-huh.
Probably 5 years, so I didn't really remember his name or anything. And then he came over with the vest, and I said, "Yeah, that's a really nice looking vest you have there, with my logo on it."
Yes.
Yeah. So we got back in it, okay, and then I invited him to come with me that night because he has yet to find a gray band. So yeah. So unfortunately, he went the wrong way.
Well, he was where he needed to be. As long as my boy Paul got in front of one, that's all I care about.
So he ended up getting to see one. Not that he's never seen one, but that was fun. That was fun.
It is different. Well, what got you? What's your earliest experience with reptiles? What got you into the hobby?
So, what got me into a hobby is moving from inner city to out in the suburbs, and we moved into a really, really neat suburbs, which had lots of garter snakes and frogs and toads and the whole 9 yards. And it was just a unique kind of suburb area that had quite a few wild places left still, and it was kind of undeveloped. And that I started going out walking my dog after school, and coming back with garter snakes. I would find these garter snakes everywhere, and I had access to a crate that I would put these garter snakes in every day. I would put another 1 or 2 garter snakes in, and then I started, thinking about, all right, what am I going to do with these animals, and so a little child.
Yeah, how old were you around that time? Do you know?
I was 8 years old.
Okay.
Okay, somewhere around there, 7, 8 years old. Okay, and my stepfather did not care for snakes at all. Um, so I had to keep these things out in the yard, out in the backyard. And then after I caught about, geez, probably almost 50 garter snakes that were in this container, I realized, like, all right, well, I think I did what I wanted to do with these things, and saw how many were in the local area, and there was plenty. I just let them go, you know.
Mhm.
And then after that, it was years later. Um, my stepfather actually gave me uh, a Smith field guide to reptiles, to snakes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the oddest thing is, he didn't like them at all, but he had this field guide, and it had a
Yeah.
couple color plates in it. And of course, one of the color plates in it was a milk snake.
Mm.
So that's the thing that spurred me on to really. And plus, I lived in Pennsylvania, and it was only an hour and a half drive to the Pine Barrens, New Jersey. So once I got a license and was able to drive, okay, I was able to pursue, instead of just eastern milk snakes, to go after the coastal plain milk snakes. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And so every day of my life for about 7 years almost, it took me to find one. Um, and once I started finding them, I started finding lots of them. So, and then, I brought two back to breed. So,
And so that's kind of so early on when you were getting into reptiles, was that the majority of where you were learning your knowledge from, or just an interest in what was out there was the field guide, or did you run into somebody that had any interest as well with it?
well, I did run into quite a few other people that had same interest. Okay, and we started snake hunting a lot together. When we actually started traveling, the guys that I ran into were had the connections. They knew everybody. Okay, and they were guys that actually introduced me to North Carolina snake hunting, and they were the guys that took me to Southwest Texas to go for gray bands. Okay,
Okay.
and there was a group of about 8 of us that traveled all over the place. Okay, to go to these specific locations to look for these specific snakes. So the mainly coastal plains milk snakes, um, the gray bands. Okay, and then anything else that was kind of odd, different or whatever. We would go to these other places. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay. And so when you met up with those group of guys, was that kind of were those the people that first kind of take you under their wing, and that was like, okay, this is more than what I just thought it was?
Yes.
Or were you already okay, so that was the
Yeah.
changing point there.
Yeah. It was way more than I thought. It was just the wow factor. It was like, holy crap. We were. I was introduced to a lot of things that I would never have found out on my own, for sure, if it wasn't for these guys.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always so interesting, right? With now where we're at, and there's so much information just at,
Yeah.
readily at our fingertips
Right.
that early
Back
on,
back then, there was not.
yeah,
Back then,
yeah, it was
there was
all about
not.
who you knew, or just
Yeah,
running into
absolutely,
somebody.
absolutely.
Where'd you run into those guys? Was it a pet shop
Well,
or
they
what
were,
was
yeah,
it?
they were actually like friends. They actually were in my local area. We had a lot. Some reason Southwest Pennsylvania housed a lot of reptile enthusiasts. We had like the third biggest reptile organization in the country at the time. Okay, besides California and Florida, there was Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And I remember the first show was in a Quonset hut, okay, and it was so big that the next show had to be in a bigger place, and then the next show after that had to be in a bigger place. It
Yes,
was
sir.
amazing. It was absolutely amazing how many people were into reptiles, at that time that were in that area, just in that local southwest Pennsylvania. It
Yes,
was
sir. Yeah.
crazy, crazy.
Yet that is interesting, right? Because there seems to be quite a few people from that area that are into it, that I've ran into, and they're usually very hardcore guys. Whether it's field herping or keeping, it's a very serious hobby. It's interesting. It's refreshing to see.
Yeah,
It is. I
absolutely.
wonder why in that area it cultivated that type of.
It's a phenomenon, okay, and I can't really. I've always thought about it, and tried to figure out why why it was such a phenomenon at the time. It really, really, really generated so many people that were extremely serious about the whole, the industry, whether it be just field herping or captive breeding. We had a lot of people that were like super super serious about it. The Philadelphia Herpetological Society came out of that. Okay.
Mhm.
And these guys were dead serious about like captive breeding. Okay. Disease,
Mhm.
trying to contain disease and trying to figure out disease. These were guys early on. No veterinarians actually worked on reptiles at the time. There were
Oh,
some that
okay.
worked on birds that we kind of pushed them into the reptile thing to get them
Yes, sir.
away from birds. So that was like the initial. Um, that was some of the early on initial veterinary practices on trying to figure out dosages for reptiles. You know, um, so
That's very cool too. I mean, just how ahead of their time they were, and just people being serious about it. And I think so often it seems like there was just kind of an acceptance of seeing something that, how it got it wasn't really discussed very much, but now as we've moved on, we're starting to hear more of that with more testing and different resources being out there. But to be thinking about that, you know, however many years ago, that wasn't happening. Obviously, it was, but it's very cool. And
yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
no, and just so between the ages of 8, besides your crate of snakes, did you ever talk your parents into letting you keep anything in the house, or was
Nope.
it okay? So
Nope.
then, so you started. So from 8 to then 16 is when you started herping and going out and doing all that.
Yep.
And you were still just going out and looking at the animals in the wild. You weren't field collecting. It was just out of pure enjoyment.
Yes.
All right, all right. And then when
Yes.
did you get your first? When did you get your first snake?
Well, I got my first snake at about when I was 17, I guess.
Okay.
Okay,
Eh,
because I had left the house and went out on my own. So that was the only time I was able to. I moved into an apartment myself, and
Uh-huh.
that was the first time I was able to keep anything myself. Okay, so my apartment was set up with like no TV.
Uh-huh.
All right, my TV was actually a gutted TV with a pond and a waterfall in it, and with anoles.
Okay. That's
Okay,
very cool.
and yeah, and so when I came home from work running a pet shop, I turned on the TV, which was just the light, which would light up the inside of the TV.
Hmm.
Okay, and I had a thing for anoles also because they are like the Darwin finches of the Caribbean. Okay, each
Okay.
Caribbean island has pretty much has like its own anole.
Hmm.
Okay, besides the green anole, there's a Jamaican giant anole. There's countless anoles that range all the way down in South America. And at the time, I was able to get some of these anoles from private breeders because I
Okay.
was running a pet store. Okay, and I had some we had some sources for these anoles, okay, and so
Uh-huh.
I had these anoles at my apartment, in my TV, okay, along with some great tree frogs and a couple other lizards, okay, and a couple other tree frogs. So that was when I came home from work, I would turn on the TV and I would sit there and read, and I would read Smithsonian publications. Um, I was able to find Smithsonian publications about anoles, and I would come home and sit there and read them. And at the time, I had a gopher snake that I had brought back from California, and some fresh and saltwater fish. Okay, and I still didn't have any local reptiles really. I didn't have any milk snakes yet that I kept
Uh-huh.
until I finally found the coastal plains milk snake, and that was about 3 years later.
All right. And when did you start working at that pet shop? At what age?
I started working at the pet shop at 17 when I left home.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, and I was there for about 7 years. Okay, and then I went and got after that I got a real job.
Yeah. Pet shops are fun, not a
A
real
real
job.
job with a career, okay, in a laboratory, and worked there for 17 years, and met my wife there, okay, and that's where I started. That's when I started my business, Triangulum, and then some.
Uh-huh.
Okay, we bought a house, and I turned one of the rooms into the snake room. Okay, and the house had a perfect attic to hibernate everybody. Um, So it ended up being a perfect little enterprise there. It
Yes.
was kind of a natural, yeah,
Yeah. Well, that's so cool. I mean, and that was your path. As soon as you could start to make your own choices,
yeah,
that's what you set up in your apartment.
yeah,
And I could only imagine what it felt like to sit there, come home, turn on your TV. And were you cohabbing those animals? Because you said like tree frogs and stuff like that. Were they together or
yeah.
were
They were
they
together.
separate?
Yeah, they were all in the
Okay.
TV. Yeah, it was
All right.
very interesting.
Yeah, that's super cool. No, and just to come back and be a young man and kind of sit there and revel in the feeling of that, I'm sure that
Yeah,
was great to feel. That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah. Those
I
were
like it.
like the college years.
Yes, yes. And then so you said about 3 years after that, that's when you found your. Is that the first coastal plains milk snake you had ever seen, like in the wild, or was that the first one that you established?
First one I ever seen in the wild.
All right. What was that
Yeah.
like? What's the story behind that?
Well, that was yay! After 7 years of looking for it, finally, you flip a board and there's one.
That's very cool. And then
uh,
how?
After years of going over the same area and finding nothing but eastern king snakes. Okay, I found so many. I had found so many eastern king snake. I started getting like sick and tired of them. I was like, oh god, another chain king snake. Holy crap,
Yeah.
I probably found 100 to 200 eastern king snakes.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, I literally found them so much that I would find more than one under one piece of board.
Mm.
You wouldn't think like, what are you two doing together? Okay, you guys shouldn't be together. You'd flip the thing and there'd be two of them. You'd be like, crap. Is it only a matter of moments before you'd eat the other one, or what? You know,
Yeah.
that was weird. That was so weird. And I've multiple times I've found chain king snakes under the same thing. Two chain king snakes, the same size, look like brother and sisters. Okay, multiple
Mm.
times. Okay, in southern New Jersey, even in North
I've never.
Carolina,
Yeah. I've
multiple
never.
times I've found them together.
Interesting. I've never kept that species. Is there how how often, if you know, how often do guys lose them during breeding? Is that common to happen with chain
Some
kings?
cannibalism.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite common.
Huh. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, quite
You know, you'd
common.
think maybe if it wasn't common within that species, maybe there's something there
I
with
know,
them.
right?
You know, but
Yeah,
if not,
no, but it's
yeah.
the eastern one is it's quite common.
Huh?
If you leave the babies together too long, it's quite common.
Even with the babies, interesting.
Yeah,
Weird, weird. I wonder why. I wonder if there's. I don't know. Okay. Hmm.
yeah, it's
Things
just
to
one of those
ponder on.
things. One of them things. We know all the king snakes will eat other snakes, and quite honestly, all snakes will eat other snakes.
Yeah.
Um, it's just a stimulus, okay, that it happens an awful lot in captivity. Okay, obviously for the reason that people tend to keep them together. Okay,
Yeah.
lots of people keep them together, and every time I see that, I go, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" Um, yeah, you really don't want to do that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I don't. I've ever seen that, especially with king snakes. I'm sure people do, and it doesn't work out. I mean, you see the craziness of a corn snake in with a ball python on Facebook Marketplace kind of thing
Right,
from time to time. But yeah,
a
interesting.
lot of people do
Well,
it.
yeah. And so you found your first milk snake, and I is that what lit the fire under you to start collecting these milk snakes and producing them, or
Yeah, yeah.
okay,
I only kept a pair. You know, I finally, you finally find something like that, and you just, there's no reason to continue going out there and collecting them.
yes
Okay,
sir,
you just get your pair. You get your pair, and you go with that.
and what was the
Everything
extent of your
else was more conservation than anything. My whole breeding philosophy was to breed the animals as they were and not make any kind of color mutations or albinos or anything like that, and keep them natural the way they were. And if they needed to be used in the future for, for conservation, then so be it. Then I'd have a lineage. I had a lineage that I recorded. That everything was recorded, and where the animals came from. Some of my animals were used in the scarlet king snake studies, the original early on scarlet king snake genetic studies, along with the other milk snakes. Okay,
huh?
the guys from Maryland were doing the genetics and taking genetic samples from my animals and used them for because they could trust me because I had all the records and everything early on like that, and nobody else really at that time was doing anything like that and keeping the genetics pure and keeping records on where these animals came from. So all the milk snakes that I had 20 of the at the time 25 subspecies of milk snakes. At that time, I had 20 of the 25 subspecies in my
Gotcha.
triangulum and then some um, genetics. So the guys that were doing the genetics came to me for a lot of their sampling.
Yes sir. Now, what made you decide to do that? What made you decide to be so
Uh,
cognizant of locality and documenting that?
what made me do that was that all the things that I was seeing at our shows
Mm,
and other shows where people were trying to crossbreed just
mm,
to get some other kind of snake just to make some more kind of money. Okay. The guys that were doing, were working with corn snakes, guys that were working with gray bands in Mexicana, they were, and the Leonis guys, okay, they were trying to mix everything they could to come up with something else so they could make money. Okay. And when I
huh,
saw that, I just saw like um, just a trend that was
huh,
going crazy,
yeah,
and I just projected it in my head a couple of years ahead of time,
yeah,
and saw that there was okay. Where's the lineage of these snakes going to go? Okay, they're going to be gone. If
Yes, sir.
everybody's starting to do this, and not caring about what they do, about which two snakes they put together, okay, when they were crossing the kings and corn snakes, okay, early on. If this just continues like this, where's it going to go? How are we going to retrieve these snakes? Okay, what's going to be left of these snakes? Everybody's doing this for money. How can you trust anybody? Uh, going into the future of breeding snakes, how
Yeah.
are you going to be able to trust anybody? And so
Yes.
I just early on thought somebody has to do this. Somebody has to, keep the wild lineage, okay, and not fuck around with these animals and just keep them what they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stop pushing for hybrids and stop pushing for color mutations. Okay. How about just leave them alone and just keep them the way the hell that, the way they are.
Yes. Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Because I just never. I mean, like, right? Of course, I was aware of hybridization early on, and there's been quite a few times that has happened throughout. But I guess I just didn't think about it being as pervasive as what you're making it out to be at this time or at that time. And wow, because in my mind at least, hybridization, I can't think of a worse thing you can do in any breeding project, because you don't always have access to the founder stock, right? I think we're seeing a
Yeah.
lot of that with reticulated pythons now, where for many years, right, that was a $100 imported snake you could pick up at any show, and that was taken for granted over time. And now you see people trying to establish those smaller, localities of animals, and those genetics of, how do you tell what's this and what's that, and just what we've lost over time,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. I mean, from when I started, when I was doing that, okay, nobody, there was like no concern. Okay. And I guess, rightfully so. Like had, had it in their minds, who would have even back then, who would have even thought that there would be, issues, there would be, mass destruction of habitat. Okay. And things that were common back then, things like a box turtle. Okay, at
yes, sir.
that time, I could drive over to New Jersey and catch you 10, 20 box turtles if you really wanted to, and I was that kind of person. Okay,
Yeah.
nobody would have thought of it. Nobody thought less of it because those things were just common across the whole entire eastern seaboard. Okay, but
Yeah.
now their habitat is so it's so disjunct now.
Yeah.
They and the habitat itself is gone.
Yeah.
So something that was so common at the time is now on a threatened species list.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
who would have
terrible, right?
thought? Who would have thought 40 years ago that this would happen?
Yeah.
Okay, and no, I I don't know why, but I personally took it upon myself to say I can see what's going to happen in 20 years from now, that these animals are going to be in trouble,
Yes, sir.
and
Yeah.
and we need another starting point, and we need at least one responsible person in the non-professional field that maybe professionals could actually turn to, because quite honestly, if I was a professional now and looking for help for a species here in America, um, there's no way in hell that I would turn to the private sector, you know, for
Yeah.
any of that kind of lineage whatsoever, because you can't trust them. There's just no
No.
way that you could trust them.
Yeah, especially if it's so mixed back, and I think that's definitely something that's been popping up. Not more, but I know there's kind of been, it seems like a resurgence of seeing the albino gray band, you know, and that's a hybrid piece of trash. You know,
Yeah,
that was never, I've never heard of anybody catching an albino gray
there
band.
is none.
Has not happened.
Right.
So where did that animal come from? At some point in its life, or in that family tree of that animal, it was, you know, hybridized to produce that and bring those genetics in. And it's just, you know, if you, it would be annoying even if people were doing it and selling it as a hybrid, because
Yeah.
you know the problem with hybridization is even if you have the best intent, you give the snake away, you sell the snake, whatever you do with the snake, and that person then doesn't keep it, or you know they're just not as interested as you, and you're talking about an animal that has a 30-year lifespan, it's the chances it's moving to other households, there's a pretty high chance. And you know, we just think that people know what we know, but the average person doesn't know, you know, a Texas rat snake from a rattlesnake.
Yeah.
And so if the people can't tell the difference between that, and then now, you know, little Jimmy's getting rid of his, you know, albino what gray banded king snake, I think is what they said it was, you know, and then it just moves down and down, and then it, you know, yeah, shouldn't be breeding those.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a freak. It's a freak. Like I said, once you put that out there, okay, God only knows what's going to happen. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, you know what's going to happen. It's just going to get worse and worse and divide and divide and divide. And then you have those animals out there now. Those animals are going to get dilute and put into the mainstream.
yeah, yeah,
So in another 10 years from now, all your locale gray bands are are probably going to be useless also.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's, you know, yeah, locality is an interesing topic,
It
right?
is quite
Where
another topic to deal with. And
yeah.
yeah, let's not go there tonight.
You know my stance on that. Yeah, we'll
That's
move
a
on.
whole nother podcast right in its own.
We're about to start getting death threats. All right, so you said you had 20 of the 25 subspecies of
Yeah.
milk snakes. Where were you sourcing most of those animals? Were most of those animals that you found, or
A lot of them were animals that I found, okay, all across America. A lot of them at the time were sourced with other um, milk snake aficionados, shall we say?
uh,
Okay, some of them were out of zoos. Okay, a lot of my I had gotten Mexicana. I gotten at the time they were called Theori. Okay, the Leonis. Okay, came out of the Dallas Fort Worth Zoo. Um, and some of the South American and Central and Mexican milk snakes came out of the zoo.
gotcha. Okay. And then what was your first successful breeding in milk snakes? What was that? What
My
species?
first successful breeding. Um, I would if I remember correctly, that would be the coastal plain milk snake.
Okay. And what was the breeding process like for you at that point?
Um, Pretty much trying to figure out. Okay, at the time we didn't have all the records that you have now.
Mhm.
Okay, we didn't have other guys to go on except for a few books. Okay, there were a couple of TFH books, that was the pet trade industry publications. Okay, so I had to derive all that information that I could from those books and Smithsonian publications at the time. So I was fortunate to have access to the Smithsonian publications. I had a friend that came in my pet store early on that was in the Smithsonian. And as a matter of fact, the one of the employees at the Smithsonian that was involved in one of the expeditions down in South or Central America, in Mexico, rather. I'm sorry, into Sinaloa, Mexico. They brought back the first Sinaloan milk snakes. Well, actually, the second Sinaloan milk snakes. Okay, and they had a whole other genetics of Sinaloan milk snakes. They went down and got some themselves from the mainstream ones that went out into the hobby industry. And the guy actually told me about how their breeding project went,
Uh.
traded me a pair of milk snakes for some rats, some feeder rats. Okay. Nobody had seen, I hadn't seen them. Nobody in the area had ever seen Sinaloan milk snakes. You can imagine what happened to my eyeballs when I saw these milk snakes that he brought in.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and it was like, I had, at the time I had only ever seen North American milk snakes. Okay, and nobody else that I knew of even knew what Sinaloan milk snakes were. And the guy brought these in and said, "Hey, I'll trade you these milk snakes for for some rats."
That is a good
Yeah,
trade.
that was crazy. And I kept that lineage going. I have one snake left of that lineage at my place right now.
Huh.
And Cole Groves helped me with that. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I want to see a picture of that in particular. I like that. That is very cool. And that it's so interesting, right? That's how it kind of worked back then. You always hear those stories uh, of stuff coming out of zoos and that getting worked in, and that it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, and for people to keep moving it forward. That is very cool, Paul. I like that. And then what what was it like? What were the characters that came into the pet shop? I mean, that's obviously one that was notable. Well, I guess too. The path I was going on this, I got sidetracked because that was so good. What was your incubation like? What substrate were you using? What incubator did you use?
So we use pretty much a standard of what's used today. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. At that time, it wasn't the everything that was published at the time. Anything that you could find that was published was the standard stuff that we're using today. Okay.
Okay.
We were using perlite and sphagnum moss. Okay. And trying to find it was hard at the time to find clean substrate things like the sphagnum moss. You had to go to specialty places to find long stem sphagnum moss that was clean. Okay, and use that in the bedding boxes. Okay, and then take the eggs out of the bedding boxes and put them into sterilite and perlite. Okay, and to this day, I that's all I use is sphagnum moss and sterilite.
Yes, sir. That's interesting, right? That it's just been done the same way. That's the same way I do it. So, um,
Yeah, it's not a
it's
difficult thing. It really is
no.
just a matter of like keeping it clean.
Yes,
It
sir.
doesn't
Yeah.
doesn't need to be it doesn't need to be any one like super special formula. It just needs to be clean, okay? When you buy um, sphagnum moss, okay, you have to go to a good source, okay? And like I said, the long stem source. Those guys seem to sterilize their sphagnum moss before they bag it, okay? And then the starlight, okay, and the perlite, okay, that stuff's sterilized before it gets bagged,
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Keep it clean, and if you need to, put it in the oven again, okay, and bake it
Yes, sir.
to
Yeah.
sterilize it, and that's it. It's just something that needs to keep moisture,
Yeah.
It doesn't need to
Yeah.
be.
No.
There's no any one for our colubrids that we raise in captivity here. There's no one magic formula. It's just keep it clean. That's it.
No, that's it. I mean, every year that I set any eggs up, I always sterilize the substrate uh, before I use it
Yeah,
in small
yeah.
batches.
That,
Yeah,
that
just to be
that's the
safe.
key.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
key. And once you do that, as long as the eggs are in good shape, okay, you're going to have 100%.
yeah. Interesting. Good, good. Well, what were your early herping trips like, or herping trips that are notable to you? Some of the characters.
Yeah, well, I mean, the guys that I hung out with were crazy. Okay, we went to North Carolina a lot. Okay, we went. Those guys would like walk right into somebody's yard. Okay, because every North Carolinian in that area was, hillbilly kind of thing,
Yeah,
and they would have appliances on their porch. They would have them, in the backyard. Okay, and instead of like, like if it was me, I would not, I would always go knock on a door and say, "Hey, don't shoot me. Would you mind? Do you mind?" And at the time, that was right at the time when people looked at you, especially, North Carolina was still kind of divided. It's still kind of civil warish. And
yeah,
there were hillbillies big time. Okay,
yeah.
so you had to kind of be careful and approach people a little bit differently. Okay, there were times when we went into the motel. Okay, in the motel, you go in these motels, and there would be tree frogs,
Oh,
like in the office. Okay, and I would be talking to the guy at the motel and registering and everything, and there would be a tree frog down there in the corner on the window, and I'd grab it and I'd put it in my pocket, okay, just to get it out of the office and set it free,
yes, yes.
and those people didn't really like pay any attention to them. They really didn't, and it was like, if you just made it obvious of what you were doing, they'd be like, "You're not staying at my motel," you know. So
Yeah.
you didn't want to do anything that caused, we drove, well, almost 800 miles at the time to drive from PA to North Carolina to go snake hunting, you know.
Yeah.
And so when they asked you what you were doing, you certainly didn't want to tell them.
Yeah.
Okay, we always had to tell them like, oh, we're wildlife photographers, is what we do. Oh, so you're not here for the bass fishing tournament? No, actually, we're not. Okay, but we might get some pictures of that though.
Uh,
Okay, but we were wildlife photographers basically most of the time.
it's
You
so
didn't
funny.
really you didn't really want to tell them what you were doing there. Okay, they wouldn't let you stay in the motel if you did. Okay,
Wow.
so yeah, you'd had to kind of tell them, be secretive about it. Okay, what are you doing? We're just hanging out. We like the area. We come down. We like to do wildlife. We come down. There's North Carolina. There is an interesting place, and that was the area where they released an animal called a red wolf.
Okay.
Okay, and it was the only place they rescued these animals from extinction.
Uh,
And when they went to release them, nobody would let them release them. Nobody wanted them back.
yeah.
Okay, so they were kind of stuck, and they ended up releasing them there in Northeast North Carolina, and that was a big deal back then for any red wolf sightings. Okay, so that was another excuse that we gave. Oh, we're down here for are you down here for the red wolves? Yep, yep, we're down here to see if we can get a red wolf sighting. Okay, and post it. They had a marina where if anybody saw a red wolf, you would post it there at the marina, and
Huh.
we finally got one.
Oh
We
wow.
finally got one about, I would say, probably 8 or 9 years later. And we finally got a red wolf sighting. Okay, and it was pretty cool. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. That's very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the best thing about getting out and herping. It's not only just about the reptiles that you find. It's about just the randomness of what you run into, because there's you never know what's going to be around that corner.
exactly, exactly. down in
Yeah.
Texas, the first time I saw a beaver
Yeah.
was only 2 years ago.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
it was like, oh my God, what the hell are these things doing there? What are they doing there?
Yeah.
And it was
Especially when
like,
you're in Texas, you don't think of beavers.
yeah, like, and it turns out, well, they're a natural animal along the Rio Grande and
Yeah.
along any of the rivers. It was like, what? I didn't know that
Yeah.
until like 2 years ago.
Yeah. My buddy saw a otter over by Baker's Crossing.
Wow.
I remember. Yeah. I was like, I didn't know. I
Yeah,
didn't know
you
we had
just don't see
otters.
them too much.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, you never know what you're gonna run into.
No,
Well, when was your first trip to Texas to go herping?
Texas was 1986. We did a 42-hour drive from Pennsylvania nonstop with two vehicles. Me and the one guy in the back vehicle pulled up to a cut that was never looked at before by them. Okay, and they all told me, the guy told me, I always wanted to stop at this cut. It looks like a really good cut, and we've never stopped at it. And he said, get your light out, okay? And we stopped at it, and I put my light out the window, and there was a gray band. Okay, talk about beginner's luck, okay? But
Yes,
we
sir.
were there for another week, and I never saw another gray band. And then I never went back to Texas until another 20 years later. And so I never saw another gray band until 20 years later. Okay. And we found one outside of Langtree, me and the
Yes,
wife.
sir.
So um, that's the only reason why I hadn't seen another gray band for so long is because I never went back to Texas for so long.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was another like almost 15 years later to go back to Texas again. So I had only been to Texas a handful of times,
Yeah.
and so now I got like five under my belt. Yeah,
I know you're
exactly.
doing good. You're doing good. I like it. Well, yeah, that's a hell of a score rate there
Yeah,
on your gray bands when you think about it.
yeah,
I like
and
it.
right, and they've all been actually kind of decent looking gray bands too.
Yes. Yes. No,
None
I've
of
heard.
those hideous ones that come out of some of the unusual places.
Yeah.
The only one I'm disappointed about is the one I finally found down Juneau Road.
Yeah. Oh, little
That's
one-eyed
the
Willie
only
there.
one that I just right away just turned it around and said, "Go back, see ya,
Get
see
out
you
of here,
later."
you ugly mutt. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I look at his pictures now, it's like, that wasn't that bad of a bad of looking a great band, okay. But I certainly didn't want to. I definitely didn't want to keep it for sure for myself.
I,
Okay, I have a
I feel like
totally
you
different.
stared.
I like the Alterna.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so and I have yet to find one of those. So.
We'll
So
get
I
you out
guess
there sooner
I'll
or later.
continue going to Texas until I find one of those.
There you go. Well, I hope you find one, but I want you to keep coming out here. So I guess I hope you don't find one anytime soon, or at least we find it together.
Yeah, that would
Well,
be
good.
great if we found it together, for sure.
Yes, yes. Well, so what were some of the notable species of snakes that you worked with throughout time and kind of early on?
uh, Flying snakes.
Okay. Huh. What was that like?
That was excruciating
Oh, okay.
and very unrewarding. Okay, it just didn't go that well at this. It was really early. It
Yeah.
was really early on, and getting them and going, huh, oh my god, I got paradise flying snakes.
Yes, sir.
And I have no information.
Yeah.
Okay, so working that at that time was not a good thing. Okay, and it did not work out well at all. The other thing that I got into was flying lizards. Okay, I
Okay.
had a really nice setup, and it they went really well for quite some time. I went beyond the average life cycle of them.
Uh,
Okay, because I was working with anoles at the time also, so I had already had the type of setup to to get those things going, and I did really well, but I never got any breeding with them. Okay, I kept them alive for like way longer than most people did. Okay, and I've always had good success with everything that I've had, that I've kept alive. I just lost my original Mexicana male that I've had for 32 years.
wow.
He just died 2 days ago.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear that.
So, but I've been waiting for him to die. I've been, you know, dude, you have to die. He was so
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
He was so bad. I was just like, dude, you need to die.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he couldn't eat. He wasn't able to eat since he's been out of hibernation this year.
Uh,
So that's how bad he was. He was, he lost all his body weight like me right now, and he needed to die. He really did.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
he just couldn't go on any further. His anatomy wasn't able to digest food. Okay, but 32 damn years. That's
Yeah.
pretty. That's like wow. Okay, and I've also had a milk snake for 19 years, or not. Sorry, I'm sorry, not 19 years, 29 years.
Oh, that's a big difference.
That right, and that for a milk snake,
Yes.
that's like holy shit, you know. And I'm talking about a North American milk snake.
Oh
Okay,
wow.
yeah, Central Plains.
Yeah.
It was my original Central Plains milk snake that I got from a friend. It was one in a clutch of nine. It was the only one that hatched. Okay, and it was the orneriest mother freaking milk snake you've ever seen. And till the day it died,
Yeah.
till the day it died, it was the coolest looking milk snake, but it was the orneriest, ridiculous, most ridiculous milk snake you've ever tried to raise up in captivity.
Yeah.
And then it finally, after 29 years, 2 years ago, it finally passed.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's very impressive. And also it speaks to your keeping, and
yeah.
how you do everything. That's very good. What so besides the milk snakes, besides flying snakes, I don't know about that. That's interesting. What over time, what was some of the interesting outcomes that you saw in your breeding or stuff that stands out to you?
Um, I never had, because I kept them, and they were locale specific, and it was never introduced to anything else. Okay, I never produced or saw anything out of the normal.
Hmm.
And as far as some of the strange stuff, um, just unusual would be early on before they knew what Ruth and I and Arcifera, okay, Jalisco milk snakes, before they knew the difference of those two animals. There was a controversy there, and I had both of those animals at the time.
Okay.
And so there was a mix up with those animals, okay, and what they were, and even I had them as wrong, okay, and I had at the time I was able to procure the Lake Chapala Jalisco milk snakes, okay, and they were just different from the Jalisco milk snakes, because the Jalisco's had rings like kind of like um, nice and clean rings round all the way around, like Sinaloans were.
I
Okay,
see.
only the rings were a lot shorter. Okay, they weren't as long as Sinaloans. Okay, and these Jalisco milk snakes had the same deal. They had rings that were even all the way around. They weren't split by the black on the top of them or anything. But then there was another type that was in the trade at the time that came from Lake Chapala.
Okay.
Okay, and those guys had the splitting of the black on the top, and they had lots of black infused with all their red rings and everything. And I actually produced one animal out of all the animals that all the Lake Chapala animals that I produce, one animal had absolutely no red in it except right under the chin, and
Oh wow.
that was the only red that it had on it. Okay,
Yeah.
and that was out of a naturally occurring pair. That was no funny stuff or anything like that. It was just the fact that those animals tended to be like almost black already in the
Yeah.
wild. Okay, they had the black crossing over and splitting on top like a zonata had,
Okay.
or a pyro.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and to this day, they have that trait, and
Huh.
you can find them occasionally now to this day in the trade.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
so
And do you know
that's
where
the old.
those animals, where they, who brought them in? How'd they first get into the
They came
country?
in out of the Dallas Fort Worth Zoo expedition.
Okay.
Okay, as far as I know, okay, from what I remember, all those animals they came out of Mexico and Central and South America at the time, ended up at the zoo somehow. If it wasn't their expedition, it ended up at that zoo. Okay, and a breeding program at the zoo, at the
Gotcha.
Texas Zoo. Okay, and they did so well with it. This was before they don't do this anymore. They do not like sell their offspring to the public sector anymore. None of the zoos do. They made it officially a no
Yes, sir.
to do.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
because of some politics or whatever. So we were lucky to early on to be able to get these animals before the zoo did whatever they wanted to do with them, do away with them. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know what they would have done with them at the time. They might have euthanized these animals.
Yeah.
Okay, and we know now, like now, there's almost no getting these animals anymore out of Mexico.
Hmm.
We've got some sources now. Okay, after about 40 years. Okay, we do have some sources now that some of these animals are now once again coming back into the country. Things like Pueblans
Oh.
and Hondurans. Okay, that I thought we would never see again.
Yeah.
Okay, but that has come back. There are now sources from these zoos and from the places themselves that are now importing animals into America. So they are
Oh,
once again
interesting.
coming back.
Yeah.
That's cool
Wow.
because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
never,
That's cool.
yeah, I never thought that like Mexico shut us off. So I
Yes,
never
sir.
thought we'd see Mexicanas again, and I don't think that we have seen Mexicanas again and Leonis, okay,
Hmm.
or Durangos,
Yeah.
okay. I don't think we've seen any of those come back yet, okay. I think they are still off limits to us here in
Yeah.
America.
What are some of the species that you think have been lost in the the American herpetoculture over time?
Well, that would be the Mexicanas, okay.
Hmm.
Any of the Mexicanas, okay. Any of the Guerreri, and probably Leonis, also the most common one in captivity now. Okay, everybody has Leonis.
Hmm.
They're so common and they breed so easily. And the Mexicana are the same way. They're very common uh, down there, and they breed very easily. Okay, they interbreed very easily with the other guys also. Okay, there's just not a whole lot of people who work with them for some
Yeah.
reason. I don't know why. I think they're such a cool animal. They are like the originator of all the Mexicana type animals down there. They are the Ruthveni supposedly is one of the originator animals from all those animals. Okay,
Okay.
and it's a very little circle of these animals, a very little area where all these animals come from down there, and which is totally off limits to us now. Okay, and probably I have a hard time believing if they will ever, be able to be imported back into America again. Those
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
So Ruth and I, Greerai, Mexicana, and the Leonis. Okay, all those guys. I don't know that they would be coming back into America or not ever.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think kind of I've always worked on the assumption that yeah, it's never going to happen.
Yeah,
So yeah, that was always kind of my assumption. So to hear anything's coming in one way or the other, that's interesting,
yeah.
and that's good. That's good to hear. All right. Well, what were your what are some other notable animals that were in your collection and projects that you felt like you were working on?
Um, I've had things like uh, house snakes and um, just about any kind of weird snake that you can think of being in the pet trade. I've
Yes, sir.
had it for a time, a limited time. Your European rat snakes. Uh, yeah, a lot of the African house snakes and some of the oddball ones there. One thing I've never had in my collection whatsoever is anything venomous.
Mm,
Okay, uh, outside of a night snake,
yeah.
okay, or a garter snake. I know everyone can, everyone nowadays, okay, considers garter snakes venomous. Okay, I've had them bite me up to my, like halfway down their throat to my pinky. Okay, and never had like a fang mark
Yeah.
on my pinky from a garter snake. Okay,
Yeah. Or any type of reaction
I'm
to it.
just, whether I'm sure there's people that are sensitive to them. But to consider it for me to consider a garter snake after catching like almost 50 of them when I was 8 years old, okay, and having the biggest garter snake I've ever seen bite that shit out of me all over my hand, okay. I guess I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm not sensitive to them there, and to me, they're not venomous. So
That's good. You're built different, Paul.
yeah,
They don't make tanks like you, Paul. Oh yeah.
yeah. There's no venomous snakes that I've picked up that I've gotten bit by. So
There you
I'm
go.
just as susceptible to,
I don't know.
to
Maybe not.
maybe not.
Maybe
Who
they
knows?
maybe they shouldn't be messing with you. That's
I do
the
know somebody. I do know somebody that I don't know if if he holds the record or not, but he's been bitten by copperheads 7 times in 1 year.
Oh no. In 1 year, that's
In 1 year, okay, less than a year, he's been bitten because he was force feeding baby copperheads barehanded.
oh. Oh.
Okay, so he's just about immune. You know what I mean? This guy's
Yeah.
just
I
about
mean,
immune. So
that's one way to do it. It's cheaper than going to the hospital. That's
yeah, he wanted
wild.
me. He wanted the last time he got bit. He wanted me to hook him up to the car to do the shock thing.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know if you guys have ever heard of that.
No, sorry, I haven't heard of
Okay,
that.
yeah, oh,
What's that?
cool. Okay, so back in the '80s, I think,
Okay.
back in the '80s, there was this thing where there was these guys. They were in a magazine, a hunting magazine, like Sports and Field or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and it worked to some degree by they would take a stun gun and they modified this stun gun so it would go around your limb, and it was mainly being sold for dogs.
Okay.
Okay, and they swore up and down if you stun gunned your dog that got bit by a pit viper, yeah, that it
Uh-huh.
would neutralize the venom.
Okay.
Okay, and so there was some science to it, but how do you do a study? You know what I mean?
I
And so
mean,
they were selling these things, and
okay.
they had some proof that the dog came out of it. Okay,
All
the
right.
dog actually survived, and they swore up and down it was because of this stun gun, this modified stun gun. It would be able to go around the backside of the dog's limb, and then the front side of the limb where the bite mark was, and get most. It would get the most penetration that way.
I can think of a model on how I would try to experiment with this,
Uh-huh.
but I don't think it would be ethical. And I
Right,
wonder what the
exactly,
testing that
exactly.
they were doing was.
Exactly. How do you do a study like this? Okay.
Oh, well, you go to the pound, and I'm here to save all the dogs today.
So all they could do, okay, because they had that one
uh,
case. They had
uh,
one case, so all they could do was sell it for dogs.
uh.
And all the reptile guys saw it and went, I'm carrying a stun gun with me, okay? It personally, even myself, okay, I have it to this day.
Oh, do
I
you?
have a, I, I have a stun gun out in my freaking case.
You never know. I mean, I
Have I
guess if
ever
shit
used
really
it?
hits the
No.
fan.
Yeah, I've never used it because I don't mess around with the venomous out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
That's hey, it's bad if you're
but
trying
just
that.
in
You're like, it's
case,
break glass, sweetheart, get
exactly,
the
just in
stun gun. I'm going
case.
down.
I always make sure the battery's charged when I go out.
If it gets this bad, we're stun gunning. Oh, that's hilarious. That's so funny.
Yeah,
Oh no.
that's a crazy thing.
I mean, they still sell those the little sucker things at
I know,
Walmart
right?
for snake bites. So I
this
guess
the snake bite
if they
kit.
can if they can do that, maybe the
Yes,
stun gun guys
this
they could
the
have been
snake
onto
bite
something
kit.
here.
Right. I
Yeah.
still have. I have two of those because I do the Boy Scout merit badge.
Okay.
Okay. And I use them. I take out everything and I go, see all this stuff?
Uh,
Never ever use it. Okay.
there you go.
Never use it. Okay. They don't make these anymore, and for a good reason. All they do is freaking damage everything that you're trying to go to the hospital for. Okay.
Dude,
Uh,
there's some dude out there that his kids are living a nice life off of the Walmart contract
yes.
on those snake bite kits.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes.
That's crazy.
It is. Yeah. A little
Here, kid,
suction
here's something
thing.
useful.
A little
Yeah.
knife, okay, a little blade in there. I'm like, slice yourself open, okay,
Just
all
make the
right, yeah.
situation
Make
worse.
two X's, yeah, make the X's, okay, and then suck on it. Right? Yeah, that makes a
uh,
lot of sense nowadays, doesn't it? Yeah, it's
exactly.
amazing what made sense back in the day. Okay, way back in like the 50s and the 60s. Okay, compared to
Yes.
today. Compared to today, we were so defunct in our medical opinions and everything. It was so bad. It was so bad. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just so interesting over time. But again, there's upsides and there's downsides to how readily available information is, right?
Yeah.
You get a lot of people that
Yeah.
are new into the hobby that are excited and energetic about it,
Sure.
and they believe they're giving the best opinion they can, but
Yeah.
it just muddies the water,
Yes.
and I'm definitely guilty of this myself, where I'm at a point now where I'm not trying to get in a 12-hour slow reply debate on Facebook about what type of substrate you should use.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep moving. But I
Right.
feel like that's, is that wrong of me? Maybe, maybe I should say, hey, well, maybe no, do it this way, you know, but I'm not
No,
going to.
everybody's got their, stuff like that is inconsequential. Okay, because like I said, it it really it doesn't matter as long as you keep your everything clean. Okay, that is the most important thing in captivity. Everything successful in captivity is in keeping everything clean.
Yeah.
Okay. All my success, everything all my ventures going back in the day, when you have access to like everything that there is in the pet industry, I had that for
Yeah.
for a time. And back in the day, things were coming in the country hot and heavy.
Mm.
Okay, whatever you wanted, if you wanted anything in particular, you pretty much could get it. Okay, it pretty much was available.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, like I said, things like paradise flying snakes, flying lizards. Okay. Okay. Those things are next to impossible now. I'm guessing. Okay. Chameleons coming out the wazoo. The anoles. The anoles coming in from some of the islands that aren't even our islands.
Yeah.
Okay. The anoles that I was getting, at the time, they actually came out of Germany. And they went from the German-held islands in the Caribbean over to Germany. Okay, and then the breeders would release some of them and send them over here. And so I was able to get some of the really cool ones with the big fins going down the back, ones with the leopard spots on them. Okay, I don't remember their Latin names now because it's been so long ago. But I had those lizards at one time and did quite well with them for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just a matter of like keep them clean and give them what they need.
Yes, sir. Did you ever have any contact with any of the German importers or any of the European keepers?
Only recently. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, dragon importers.
All right.
I recently I had to when I got out of all my snakes and I was only left with the snakes that the common ones that the guys didn't want. Okay, the Sinaloans, the regular Mexicanas that I had, the Arizona mountain king snakes that I had. Okay, they were all like getting old, and the guy that I sold all my snakes to didn't want them, and I ended up with them. And when I moved from back east to out west, all those animals came with us in the car. Okay, they went cross country in our car with me. So I had those snakes, and I wasn't going to get back into snakes and snake breeding or anything again. Okay, and then after about 4 or 5 years of taking care of them, I thought, let me see if I can't find some of those snakes that I had before to start this lineage up again, where I could find some pure Mexicanas, okay, and pure Ruthveni. It was fucking so ridiculously hard to find pure Ruthveni. I had to go to Germany to do it.
Wow. Yeah.
So I went to Dragon Importers. I went to a guy over there that I saw on Facebook, okay, and we talked for a while, okay, and then we set up this whole thing with the German import exporters, okay, and a week later I had these animals from Germany.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Huh.
And they were actually lineages of my animals from back in the day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. 40 years ago.
Wow. That's the coolest thing about the hobby. And I think that's something that I think it's good when you see stuff, like Halo Line from Vivid, Chaos, stuff like that, those get associated with those animals.
Yeah.
And maybe over time you lose this person did it.
Yes.
But hopefully, right, by stuff like this and different things that someone will say it and say, oh, this gentleman produced this line, and this is where this comes from.
Yes.
So that then I think it's just multi-layered good, right? It's good for the person that did it. I think it pays homage to them.
Sure.
How cool is that?
Right.
That something that you cared about 40 years ago, you put the time in, and to see it move so great of a distance, and for someone to care enough to keep that bloodline running, that's really cool. What a cool monument to your work over time.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's badass.
Yeah, at the time when I was doing all my stuff, okay, there wasn't this social media to endorse anybody, okay?
Yes, sir.
And there's a lot of people out there that a lot of people don't know, okay? There's way more than you know. They're in the cracks and crevices now, okay?
Yes.
And a lot of them are gone.
Yes.
Okay, because it's been so long ago. But I know a lot. One of the things that I wanted to emphasize on this podcast is that most of you young people out there right now don't realize how many of us that there were at going back 40 years that were really, really trying to be ethical and take animals out of the wild because you didn't have them. Okay,
Yeah.
there were no breeders back 40 years ago. There were hardly any breeders. There were only people catching snakes, wild snakes, and we didn't even know. It was hardly anybody who knew how to breed snakes.
Yes, sir.
Gray bands are one in particular. One of my best friends wrote a paper on keeping gray bands in captivity. Okay, nobody had done that before. All right,
Yes.
and so we weren't just a bunch of old timers out there, raping the land. Okay, we were bringing these animals in for conservation reasons
Yes, sir.
to try and figure out how to keep them in captivity and how to reproduce them
Yeah.
for future generations. Okay, and there's quite a few of us, not just me. Tons of us that were doing that never got any recognition whatsoever because there was no social media. Okay,
Yeah.
and plus, at the time, there were so many federal institutions working against us at the time, even though most of it was legal. They would come back in the day. They would come and confiscate your entire collection on the assumption of one animal that they were looking for, and they would sort out the pieces later. And those animals, most of them, ended up dying in captivity.
Yeah.
My buddy's whole collection is one in particular. He's the one that wrote the paper on how to keep gray bands in captivity back way back in the day. Okay, and
Yes,
when
sir.
nobody at that time, gray bands were notorious for just eating lizards, and that's it. Okay,
Yeah.
and till to this day, everybody still has problems with gray bands and trying to get them off lizards and get them off on the pinkies. You know,
Yes, sir. Yeah.
that's how notorious they are for lizard eaters, and how to breed them and how to raise them in captivity. Back when we were starting, when I was starting, and he was starting, okay, nobody had that information. It just was not available, okay, at the time.
Yes, sir.
So you got to understand that we were pioneers with that,
Yep.
and it somebody needed to do it, or else you guys wouldn't have all these captive bred animals now.
Yes. Yes. 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah,
No. And thank you. Thank you for having those thoughts and putting the work in and sticking with it and being diligent. I appreciate you for sure.
yeah. I
For
know.
many reasons, you know. So I'm glad that I know you, buddy.
Yeah,
I'm glad
thank
we
you.
got to meet.
Same here.
Yeah. No. And the gentleman you're talking about, I
You know
man,
who
I'd
it
love
is.
to get him on here. I do. I'd love to
Yeah,
get him on here. I gotta bug the hell out of him because I think that would
yeah.
be
Good luck with that.
that. I know. I'm gonna have to pay someone to go knock on his door and be like, hey, this guy's texting you, right?
Uh huh.
Like, I know
Yeah,
people in his
yeah,
area.
yeah. I can't even. He won't even talk to me. So,
uh,
yeah. Good luck with all that. So I hope that
I'm
you're
gonna send
successful.
someone to his house. Yeah, I'm gonna send someone to his house. That's we're gonna get desperado here.
I hope you're
It's gonna be a bill
successful.
collector.
Yeah, because
Okay.
there's a wealth of knowledge there too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
No,
so
I really appreciate that guy. I mean, that guy is a key fundamental turning
yeah,
in
yeah, exactly.
in my herping and my understanding and appreciation for reptiles.
Yeah,
I already did, but getting to chat with him was that lit an even greater fire under my ass to where it can yeah, it just fundamental change just getting to talk to him,
yeah.
so good guy for sure. Well, are there any other things that I should have asked you? Well, there's one topic that I want to address, but I'll finish this thought. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you, or anything else that you think is that should be brought up or said?
Well, there's nothing on top of my head. I was just going to ask you if you had any other questions that we haven't covered yet. Okay.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, there's nothing on top of my head that I can think of. I think I interjected most of the stuff that I wanted to, uh, you know, cover in this podcast. About things going back in the day, and how, we pioneered a lot of this stuff.
Yes, sir.
And I'm sure that a lot of young people don't think about that. And we've been accused, my generation has been accused of so many wrongdoings, okay? And it just simply isn't so, okay? There are quite a few people that were, we could say, yes, did a lot of wrongdoings, okay? But there was so many more that did all the pioneering work for your generation,
Yes,
okay? That you would not have any of the stuff that you have now if it wasn't for our generation. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And that's the only thing that I wanted to, really emphasize on this podcast about, this initial podcast. So
Yes,
I
sir,
think
for
we
sure.
covered the important stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. And it'd be great. We'll probably think of things after this podcast is over.
Yes.
That when, we should have, why didn't we talk about that? We just aren't, thinking about it right at the moment. Okay.
Every time I'm
hopefully
going through editing,
we can do another one.
Yes. Oh, for sure. For sure. I would love that. I would love that. And
so
and
I would
I'll
suggest, that both of us, after this podcast is go write down shit as you think of it for the next one.
Yes, sir. I will for sure.
How's
There's
that?
one more thing that I wanted to ask you about.
Okay.
We briefly touched on it in the beginning where we were talking about albino gray bands. And I
Okay.
know that you were a little bit, if you're comfortable talking about this, a little bit closer to that situation, kind of knew the players that brought some of those mutations into the hobby early on.
Yeah.
And would you mind kind of just going over that story again of your understanding of how that situation broke down?
Well, that's definitely a hybridization. Okay, from some other animals. I not going to mention any names. Okay, I don't want to mention any names really. But I just want to. I do want to mention that it's not a natural thing. Okay, it's a hybrid. Okay, and so once that gets into the pet trade, okay, it's going to get diluted into the pet trade, and anytime you see anything with that trait, you're going to have to know it's no longer what you think it is.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay? That's about all I can tell you about it. Okay.
All right.
To have full disclosure and full knowledge of it. Okay. That's about all I know about it. I can't really tell you anything else about it factually. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So those facts I don't have. Okay.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, and I think that that just it needs to be known, right? That
it does.
that they're not it's not a pure animal.
Right.
The original lineage of that animal was outcrossed with another species to bring that genetic into the hobby, and it wasn't through altruistic choices that was made, for sure.
Right.
All right. Well, excellent, Paul. I think we'll end it there, and I appreciate chatting with you so much.
All right.
And we'll definitely have to do another one in the future.
Yeah, for sure. It was fun. This was fun. Okay, and let's see if we can't come up with some other topics. Okay, and get into some other nitty gritty stuff. Okay.
Excellent. We will, for sure. Thank you again for your time.
All right, buddy.
Let me zoom out on you here. Okay, you got a message for the time capsule?
Yeah, and it's simply this. My prediction for you is that even though you'll forget all about this in some way consciously, next summer at about this time, you'll remember to return.